Welcome to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan, here with our political correspondent Tal Schneider and legal reporter Jeremy Sharon. Today is Monday, June 30th, day 633 of the war. Tal, Jeremy, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, good morning, Amanda.
Hi, good morning, Amanda.
The rioting continues in the West Bank near Ramallah as Israeli settlers have torched an IDF facility, causing millions of shekels of damage on a facility that is meant to protect them. We'll talk about the pressure on Israel from the United States to stop the war in the Gaza Strip and murmurings over peace with Syria, which may or may not have gotten our prime minister out of his corruption trial this week. All this and more when we're back.
I often say that if we can only do one thing well, what we need to do is to delight the customer. Our goal is that everything we do falls into the background and the customer has the experience of, wow, that was easy. And our challenge and what has made it most interesting along the way is to keep finding ways to deliver the personal connection and the personalized service in a virtual world. We consistently get feedback unsolicited from customers along the lines of, this is the best company that I've ever worked with. At the end of the day, it's the care that each member of the team takes that makes the entire experience what it is.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan, here with our settlers reporter Jeremy Sharon and political correspondent Tal Schneider. Israeli settlers torched a multi-million-shekel facility installation used to thwart terror attacks and maintain security near Ramallah. This came after a riot by settlers outside a military base in the West Bank where, according to the IDF, settlers attacked security forces, sprayed mace, and vandalized army vehicles. Jeremy, what is sparking these overnight riots?
Well, it appears that this kind of spate of events goes back to the middle of last week. There was a severe incident in a village called Kfar Malik, a Palestinian village in the kind of central West Bank, where settlers apparently raided the village, set fire to vehicles, and then the IDF got called in when clashes ensued, and 3 Palestinians got shot dead in that incident. And then on Friday night, we had an outpost very near Kfar Malik. An illegal settlement outpost was evacuated by the Israeli border police. And following that, you had this incident, this first incident where the settlers came after they were evacuated. The settlers came back to this illegal outpost, either to set it up again, as they often do, or there's also reports that they wanted to go and raid Kfar Malik again. And the IDF came back in order to disperse these settlers because the area had been declared a no-go area, a closed military zone. And then you had this violent incident where the settlers allegedly attacked the soldiers, vandalized their vehicles, physically tried to attack them. And on the other hand, the settlers say that the IDF used live fire and that a 14-year-old boy who was amongst these settler activists got hit. He was wounded in the chest, apparently not seriously. He's in hospital, but he's not in any life-threatening situation. And then last night, I think things started off by a demonstration outside the regional IDF headquarters, and that got violent. There was violence perpetrated by the settlers there, and the IDF and other security forces had to disperse the rioters with various crowd control means. And then, as you said, you had this incident where a security installation was vandalized. It's some kind of installation to help prevent terrorist attacks. And there was graffiti on that site. with words nakama, revenge. So it appears, that this was again some kind of reprisal by these settler extremists. So we're seeing, severe tensions between these radical settler activists and the security services in the area.
Right. And just to add to what you said, during the Friday night riots, a battalion commander was apparently choked and other physical violence on him, which is extremely disturbing because, Tal, you weigh in here. This is, of course, almost brother on brother violence. I read in one of the Hebrew language reports, the father potentially of this 14-year-old who was shot, who said, my other son is in Gaza in the army serving our country, and this son is being hit by the very same forces. So it's extremely fraught. Tal, what are you seeing in terms of the societal makeup here? What's going on here?
Right. Settler leaderships and the representative in the Israeli parliament are trying to put the blame on the IDF, blaming the officers on the ground, the troop commander, for shooting extremist and violent people. However, it needs to be said that when the military arrived to the scene and got, targeted by stones, they didn't know who is throwing stones at them. For years, they've been getting stones from terrorists. And Israel's leadership in like recent years actually made a point to change the bills in order to give the military more of a leeway to react to stone throwers from the Palestinian side. But obviously, when you don't know who is throwing a stone at you, you may react according to the law. And this is exactly what the troop commander did. And, according to Israeli laws, he was actually allowed also to shoot him directly, if I may say so. And he didn't do it. He shot in the air. And we don't know up until now if this kid was shot from the military, by the way. It may have been from other direction. It's all very chaotic at the scene. But the people that were suspect the other day on Wednesday, and then on, remember during the weekend, they were somewhat arrested for like a couple of hours and then released. And then you see what you saw last night, this major attack on a military facility, communication facility that has to do a lot of works with respect to working on terror issues. And it's deteriorating anyhow.
Right, Jeremy, it seems to me that what we saw last night was twofold. We saw, first of all, a protest, people holding up signs and families going out, etc. And then it evolved into a bit of a riot, or not a bit of a riot, basically a riot. What can you tell us a little bit more about the people who are out there protesting initially?
I think that we're talking about a relatively small number of people. I think I've heard numbers around about in the hundreds of these really hardcore activists who set up illegal outposts, and the people who the police come evict the outpost, and then these activists come back and put it up again, and there's this constant kind of cat and mouse game with the security services, and also these are the same people who are committing these severe acts of violence against Palestinians, going into their towns, setting fire to houses, property, cars, and doing this severe violence. And so even though that we're talking about a small amount of people, relatively speaking, the impact they're having is very large. Now, it should also be said that the government has not only turned to a large extent a blind eye to this kind of activity, in that the enforcement by the police is particularly poor. As Tal said, these people who are suspected of violent activity against the IDF were already released shortly after they were arrested. So the enforcement in general, investigations, police going to the scene of an incident to gather evidence, it's very rare. And so we've got on one hand this lack of enforcement. On the other hand, we've even got government funding for some of this activity. So, for instance, some of the worst violence emanates from what are called illegal farming outposts. Okay, it's a small number of people with a few activists, very often very young, in their teens. Like we said, there's a 14-year-old boy involved, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. They set up a farming outpost. The idea is that they raise livestock there, and they take out sheep and goats, and they go and graze them, and that way they take control over a large area of land. Now, the agriculture ministry in the recent years has been funding these illegal outposts where a lot of violence is suspected from coming from. They've, in total, we're talking about not a huge amount of money, like I think, 10, 20 million shekels, but that's enough to help. You only need small sums of money to subsidize the raising of these livestock. And the settler movement in general has identified this issue of farming outposts as a key area, as a key way of taking control of more and more land, as opposed to residential settlements where one residential settlement only takes control over a small amount of land, but with livestock spreading out over hundreds, if not thousands, of dunams of land, that really helps assert control. And that's where you get more and more friction between those radical settlers who are grazing those sheep in those illegal outposts and the local Palestinian population. But the government is, as I said, been funding those illegal outposts, those farming outposts specifically. Just recently, we reported on another funding initiative whereby the government provided money for ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, for illegal outposts, which kind of seems crazy that something which is not a legal entity can receive money from the state. But nevertheless, that's what happened in a kind of circuitous manner. And the ATVs are used by these the people running these illegal outposts to help with shepherding their sheep, asserting control over the land where they are operating. So, on the one hand, the state is actively encouraging and enabling this kind of activity, but now that they've enabled these radical settlers to spread out and to take control, we're now seeing the backlash of that when it comes to the state services like the police and the IDF actually trying to enforce the law. And then you've got this clash between the people you funded and the state institutions which are trying to enforce the law. And I think we're seeing this is what we're seeing right now.
Tal, what are you hearing from the political echelons about all of this mix, meaning from our finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, who is the head of this, basically the political side of the settler movement, or our police minister, national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir? What are you hearing from these voices?
Yes, I actually wanted to add that the defense minister, Israel Katz, when he entered his job about 6 months ago, a little bit more than that, his first step was to announce that there will not be any more administrative detention on Jewish people in those areas, which means that they took off the hands of the security operations of the Shin Bet or IDF detentions authorities. They took, big part of their ability to investigate those very young people. And I don't think it's all only young people, but it may be, young adult as well. But with taking off the administration's detention, which was a tool for many years, they actually said, we're not doing anything because we are unable to solve those crimes. And the police in the area is not doing anything under the guidance of Itamar Ben-Gvir. So Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich both feel as if this is their own base, this is their own people, and they're doing whatever they can to avoid detentions or arrests or enforcement of whatsoever. And then the phenomenon is spreading around.
Right. Okay. So the phenomena is spreading. And so what are we hearing from the other political voices, those who are not in accordance with Itamar Ben-Gvir or Smotrich? What are we hearing, for example, from the Prime Minister about this?
So right now, as of this morning, many from the political ranks, including, by the way, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, they are full condemnation of this. They say this morning this is unacceptable and people that are violating the law should be dealt with and so on and so forth. But, as we've seen in the past, they say those words, but there is no action behind it. And the Prime Minister did not react yet. But I suppose that when he sees this wide condemnation, he will wake up and say something as well. But the question is, words aside, what do you do to solve the problem? And they're not doing almost, anything.
Okay, we'll go to a short break.
With Operation Rising Lion in full force, the moment to act is now. Your investment sends a clear message. Israel is not alone. Go to israelbonds.com or scan the on-screen QR code to invest in Israel bonds now.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our political correspondent Tal Schneider and legal and settlements reporter Jeremy Sharon. So Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer is now in Washington, D.C., where it's expected that he's going to face immense pressure from the Trump administration during his meetings today to end the war in Gaza. And it appears to me, at least from statements made by our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, that he too is on board with winding down the Gaza war. I just want to quote something that Netanyahu said yesterday. First of all, we need to free the hostages. And this was during a Shin Bet facility visit in southern Israel. And then he said, of course, we will also have to solve the Gaza issue to defeat Hamas. But I believe we can achieve both tasks. Tal, are you also interpreting Netanyahu's statements as some kind of new readiness to wind down the war in Gaza?
Yes, it's coming from several directions. We hear from the IDF also saying we need to end this because, there is, with respect to targets and operational, goals, we have reached whatever the government has told us to do. We have taken up the territory of Gaza, and we need to move on with that. So we hear that from within the Israeli society. There was a huge demonstration on Saturday night. We hear that from DC when the president of the U.S. is saying, you must end this. It's you make a hostage deal and finish it up. We hear it from ministers. They're talking off the record, but they're saying, we are reaching the point where we have nothing to look inside Gaza. The only two people who are unwilling to end the Gaza war are, the same two ministers that we mentioned on the previous item, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and Homeland Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. They think that Israel should continue with the war, and they keep on putting a threat on Netanyahu that if you put an end to that, they will step out of government. For that reason, there are some talks on the back burner. If those two are stepping out, will it bring elections? And we know that in DC, they are getting ready for that, thinking it may happen. I'm not sure that the prime minister is actually working in that direction. I think he wants to end Gaza and get the hostages out, but continue his government. So it's a bit of I'm having a hard time giving you straight answers on the entire outlook of this happening, because Netanyahu throws in sort of innuendos. He throws in like maybe a Syria's development, maybe a Saudi development, maybe also his corruption trial has been thrown into this entire scheme. So it seems to me a bit far-fetched to get all of the things done at once. But we do know that the Israeli society is putting a lot of political pressure to get a hostage deal, get those people out in exchange for end of Gaza military operations.
Okay, before we talk about Syria and other matters that you just threw out, I have a question for you. In the past, opposition head Yair Lapid has offered to join the coalition to get some kind of peace deal done, to get the hostages out, to end the war in Gaza. And is this still on the table, do you think, Tal?
I think Yair Lapid Yair Lapid and Benny Gantz are offering this kind of a network of safety for the prime minister. They say, if your other ministers will topple you, we will back you in order to complete a hostage deal with the 50 people out, get all of them out, people that are alive, 20 of them, and the rest that were murdered. But I've heard, from Yesh Atid, from Yair Lapid, that they kept on offering that, and the prime minister never negotiated or never turned back to them and said, this is on the table. He wants to keep his base more than anything. So he doesn't want to be seen as someone who went into elections on relying on centrists or lefties. And for that reason, he's completely mum about any other political apparatus that may take place.
Okay, Jeremy, let's turn to the Bibi trial. And it was cancelled for the week after several requests from the Prime Minister. And finally, there was a closed-door hearing from security leaders who apparently said that the security of the region could be at stake, et cetera, et cetera. So, Jeremy, what are you hearing about the Bibi trial being cancelled?
I don't think we're at the stage where the trial is really anywhere near going to be cancelled, despite what the President Donald Trump is trying to achieve, apparently.
For the week, though, I mean.
I'm sorry. For the week, yeah. So this week, his scheduled testimony today and Wednesday was cancelled. His lawyers tried to do that on Friday, and they submitted some written submissions, and it wasn't very convincing according to the judges. So then on Sunday we had this kind of quite dramatic development where there was a closed door hearing of the court, which was not scheduled. No one really knew about it until there was some kind of rumors and about the Prime Minister turning up to the Jerusalem District Courthouse. And as it turns out, the head of the Mossad came with Netanyahu to the hearing. So did the head of the IDF military intelligence. And they were giving information. They spoke to the judges and telling them about, apparently very important diplomatic and security issues, which Netanyahu needs to be available to deal with, and therefore cannot, be security chiefs. So whether it's Syria or other regional issues which are demanding the Prime Minister's attention, the judges appeared convinced that he does indeed need extra time this week to be able to deal with all the dynamic developments in the region right now.
Okay, so Tal, on the matter of Syria, there are several reports coming out of Lebanese news outlets right now that Syria is actually possibly willing to give up on the Golan Heights in terms of any kind of peace negotiations with Israel, in exchange, of course, for solid recognition from Israel of the government and other security matters regarding the border areas. So, Tal, do you think that it is even possible that Syria would give up on the Golan Heights?
So from what we read, what they want right now is an understanding of the security situation in southern Syria. So as a reminder, we want to tell our listeners that IDF is still inside, beyond the Golan Heights, inside Syria territory, plus on the Hermon mountain. And I think they want IDF out of those areas. It's all about security arrangements for the Israeli side. I don't know to tell you what the Israeli wants, but we do see a different approach coming from Syria with this new regime. Historically, I think when Israel went from fighting or from enemy situation to others, possibilities, the first step was a non-combat agreement, meaning we are not in peace, we are not friends, but we agree not to shoot at each other. And, this isn't just in simple terms, of course. This may be, if I understand, this may be a huge step. By the way, with the former Assad regime, the border was very, very quiet for I think since 73 all the way up until recently. So, Israel usually did not attack inside Syria for many years just because we did not have Iranian forces in there. Once the Iranian forces, got in there during, last couple of years, Israel started to work there. So if the new regime is able to make sure that you don't have, Iranian forces or other types of militarized groups, doing things inside the Syria region, I suppose they can start think of this non-combat situation. But again, it's a matter of negotiation. It's a matter of trust. And my gut feeling is that we are not there yet.
So this might not be the reason why our prime minister was excused from his trial.
I don't think that's the case, though. We have other regional issues that may, turned his schedule into urgent, other than Syria.
For sure. There's no lack, of course, in this region. So Tal and Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Amanda.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Times of Israel's daily briefing. Please check out another installment tomorrow. This episode was produced by the Podwaves and video edited by Thomas Gersh. If you have any questions or comments about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. Until tomorrow, shalom.